So my course had mandatory attendance. You had to email in for every single day that you didn't attend. The staff would keep track of your absences directly, and as a disabled person, this has meant pushing myself far past my limits and worsening my disabilities. Because when monitoring of attendance feels like surveillance, choosing not to attend feels seriously consequential. Disabled students often already feel like they don't belong. I certainly don't. You're often questioned whether you're even fit or capable, by senior lecturers even. Your place on the course feels very conditional, more so than your able peers. You often feel like you're on thin ice already. Every recorded absence feels like more evidence to back up the fact that you're just not capable. This has meant that during illness, I've made myself far worse by forcing myself to attend. Attendance surveillance creates this scarcity mindset around absences. If I'm sick, I feel like I have to push myself past the limitations that my disabilities give me so that I can save my absences for where it's near impossible for me to come in. It feels like my bar for absences have to be far higher than my able peers. This is because every absence feels like evidence that will be used against me. This often happens. Many of us have had those experiences backing up the fact. Academics must learn, listen to, and understand our experiences within the system. The systems we are forced to learn and work under are usually beyond reproach, and injustices occur without any support in the aftermath. We deeply distrust the institutions that we work within, and it's therefore difficult to trust that our absences will be treated fairly. Why would we trust a system that has repeatedly harmed us in the past? Now, some would argue that they do this because it's important to see when students are struggling and need support, but in all honesty, every time that I've had conversations about absences, it's never coming from a place of how can we support you, but rather one of how are you going to cope moving forward? The threat of your removal is always present. I am, or was, in a healthcare related degree, so I get that the demands on students here are unique and complicated, but there's rarely an effort to even try. But this lack of effort for inclusion can lead to really dire consequences. Now, these consequences manifest themselves in all sorts of ways, some big, some small. For example, before I started placements, we all had meetings with our senior lecturers about our support needs on placements. When I mentioned to my lecturer, who's also a doctor, that due to my disabilities, sleep is difficult, and on very rare occasion, I may need to take a day off placement and catch up elsewhere, either by doing a night shift or some other arrangement, her response was just her telling me about how stressful my job would be and that attendance was very important. Like, I hadn't somehow thought of how stressful a healthcare career would be and all the responsibility that it would entail. The following week, I spoke to a classmate who had seen the same lecturer about their placement support needs. They suffered with migraines and needed to request time off on a semi-regular basis. This same lecturer was completely fine with it. She said just to send them an email whenever she had a day off for her migraine and they'd take care of it for her. This just shows the double standards for disability within academia, how oftentimes academics have a hierarchy of more acceptable accessibility needs. Now, on the larger scale of consequences, last October I got COVID. Now, I took a week off, but didn't feel better and forced myself to go back to class the week after. I did test negative and I did wear a respirator mask the whole time. I was scared to take another week off that I needed for fear that it would be seen as a fitness to practice issue. I also wanted to make sure that I had more leeway to take absences later on in the year if I was burning out or struggling. And another week off made me feel like that I had spent my allowance of attendance. The consequences were dire. I forced myself to go back in the following week, and my symptoms continued to get worse. Shortness of breath, bed-soaking night sweats, the inability to sleep, sinus tachycardia, brain fog, fatigue, constant fever, lack of appetite. I was barely eating and had horrific nausea. I forced myself to attend my classes Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 through all of that. In the 2 weeks that followed that, I had to go to hospital 3 times, once overnight. The first time was to rule out a pulmonary embolism, and the second time was because by the time that I'd had my third doctor's appointment in a week, my resting heart rate had gone up to 180. We couldn't get it below 150. I got admitted to an acute medical ward at hospital where I was on a drip and having my blood tested for every disease under the sun. It ended up being EBV, a chest infection, and strep throat. Now obviously, this could have happened whether or not I had attended in the week following my COVID infection, But who knows, maybe if I felt I had the freedom and security to listen to and look after my body, I would have recovered better. Or perhaps the illness that followed wouldn't have been as bad. Or maybe my symptoms would have subsided faster. I'm getting much better now, but I'm still dealing with the consequences, and I now have a chronic disability called POTS. My recovery will take me a long time, and I still feel very, very weak. As a result, I've had to suspend my studies. This has meant that I've had to move away from uni, back home, away from all of the precious and loved connections that I've made. Academics must recognize the power that they have, and the consequences and responsibilities that come with that power, and how it can negatively affect their marginalized students. I've repeatedly voiced my concerns about 100% attendance policies, but no one seems to listen or care, just citing fitness to practice issues whenever it's raised. And thus continues the maddening cycle that most disabled students are intimately familiar with. Encounter a systemic injustice or problem, report it, be ignored and dismissed, or even gaslit, have the problem directly impact you, get no help, rinse, repeat. To make matters worse, when academics see that we stop asking for help, because it usually makes things worse, we often get told off for not asking for help, and thus the ableist gaslighting cycle also continues. We must do better at supporting our disabled students. A lot of us feel like we're going crazy, that we're alone, that we're the ones causing the problem. But as an unfortunately former disabled student, I want to tell you from the bottom of my heart that you are not the problem. It's not your fault that you're struggling to thrive in a system that is so poorly equipped to support and help you flourish. But I also know that it's so hard to believe that when so few of your classmates or lecturers share your experiences. Now, to fix this, we don't just need disability inclusion, we need disability justice within academia. We need the people that create these systems to be held accountable to the well-being of the most vulnerable within them. There should be independent bodies that inspect universities and places of education to see what their processes are for supporting their disabled students and whether they actually help. Surveys should be kept on the disabled students' experience. Do they feel supported? Are they getting what they need? How many have dropped out due to lack of support? How many are considering dropping out and why? When these things go wrong, what processes of accountability are available for these students? And are impact assessments done or reviews to see if the same situation is preventable in the future? If anyone is caught falling short on any of these metrics, the university should be fined and charged for outside disability advisors with lived experience to come in and help restructure disability support. But this work will not be done until we all feel that the system is capable of treating us fairly and equitably as equitably as our able peers. Until then, we will just continue to distrust the system, and we will continue to navigate the system with our guard up, traumatized and in fear of being excluded. Now the question is, will those with power or access to influence do anything? Now I honestly believe that a lot of the people that are holding up this policy where I study are not doing this out of malice, but they're so entrenched in institutional ableism that they can't spot it when it's pointed out to them. Though I think there's something to be said about not listening to those affected, to be honest. But anyway, I'd be really curious to hear about your experiences with disability and education in the comments below. But if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and if you'd like to see more content like this, please subscribe, and I will see you soon.